It's really an absolute privilege to get introduced for any purpose by you, Roger. Thank you for living by example and committing to the level of service that you provide to our community. Welcome to 2020, right? The MPower Luncheon is going virtual. And what I'll tell you is that is not a demonstration of high tech in today's society. It's a response to a global pandemic and the extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in today. The impact to our community has been overwhelming. It's enormous, and it accentuates the importance of the mission of Master Provisions, connecting resources to needs. In 2020, we're experiencing higher levels of just about everything. We're talking about food issues. We're talking about housing and lodging problems. We're talking about growing numbers of unemployment. We're talking about loss of benefits, layoffs, and the shuttering of businesses. We're also talking about a crisis with mental health. And all of the side impacts that this pandemic has on so many people. And whether we like it or not, 2020 is a new normal. And in my opinion, it serves as a not so subtle reminder that life is filled with inevitable hardships. None of us are immune to hardships. Hardships befall each of us, one time or another, in one way or another. Albeit, very rarely do hardships hit us all at once, like they have in this global pandemic. And we're all experiencing a moment of hardship. The question I think we all have to ask ourselves is, when that moment of hardship comes, and it is upon you, how are you going to respond? What will your mindset be? Will you view the challenges that you face as debilitating? Or will you embrace that moment of hardship as an opportunity? 5 years ago today, and completely unbeknownst to me, my destiny as a cancer patient was preordained. A very rare cancer diagnosis was imminent. You see, on October 30th, for me, it's that day of infamy, I received the diagnosis that a tumor that started growing in my left sinus cavity had found space to expand in the left orbit of my eye. It put a stranglehold around my optic nerve. I was feeling fantastic, and I was working more than full time. You can ask my colleagues and friends at Pomeroy. But what happened was I noticed a very slight distortion in my left eye, and fortunately, I listened to my body, and I saw an optometrist immediately. What I found out is that I have a very rare form of melanoma. It's not skin-based. It's called mucosal melanoma. And there are only about 400 cases a year diagnosed in the United States. Very, very rare. As you can see, I no longer have a left eye. And fortunately, I've been able to preserve my brain, which is a little more important than that left eye. Although the tumor was wedged between my eye and the lining of my brain. It was a pretty terrifying moment. The battle scars from my fight against an insidious disease are inescapable. And they're always conspicuous right here on my face. Some probably consider that to be a curse. I actually choose to view it as an opportunity. It gives me the opportunity, and I want to thank you, Roger, you and Master Provisions, and all of the individuals who'll be joining this event virtually to support your mission. for sharing goodness with me today. Because what I have found is when I can share my experience, I'm able to find purpose and meaning in my journey. I go back to that day of diagnosis. For folks who don't know me, I was born with a glass that wasn't just half full, it was overflowing with joy. My level of positivity is almost unparalleled. Yet when I got that diagnosis, in an instant, I was in a death spiral. It was like I was walking across a floor and a trapdoor dropped, and I was in a complete and total free fall. Every bit of positivity in my body drained. I was convinced I was dying, and if I believed everything I read on the internet, I would be dead in 3 months, if that. There was mass confusion around my medical care. I saw probably 10 medical professionals here in Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati at 7 different facilities. Nobody really had seen what I was diagnosed with, and there was no coordinated care. Talk about a need to put my hands over my ears and block out the noise. It was maddening. It made everything that I was going through seem like a mystery. Everyone had a suggestion, an idea, was trying to point me in a different direction. It was completely overwhelming. I probably learned the most important thing at those crucial moments in my diagnosis. I learned about what worked for me, and I wonder if it might work for you when you have your moment of hardship. The importance of figuring out what you can control in your life. There's so much we do not control. I still, to this day, do not control the cancerous cells that are moving about in my body. I do not control the therapies or the scientific research that's going on to find a way to treat this heinous disease. I don't control any of that. I don't know when I am going to die or how I'm going to die. I don't control that. But what I do know I control are 3 things, and they've been life-changing for me. To emerge from a time of incredible despair and darkness and experience joy again. My medical care. So, was it a hardship for me to seek medical care in Boston, Massachusetts, and spend close to 3 months of my journey away from my family? Yes, it was. But guess what? When my husband and I showed up at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and it was an institute, every floor was dedicated to a different form of cancer, and melanoma happened to be on floor 11. We saw the foremost experts in their field, and out of those 400 cases a year, they treated 50 of them. Within one city, we saw the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist, the neurologist. We saw the gentleman who was going to do the maxillofacial craniosurgery, along with the neurologist. Because I had to have my head carved open from this point all the way over, and then they took this portion of my forehead out. And during a 9-hour surgery, they removed everything, including the tumor and my left eye. And then, as luck would have it, there were some complications, and they accidentally nicked the lining of my brain, and I had to have a subsequent emergency surgery due to a spinal fluid leak for another 3 hours. 9 days in ICU. My husband never left my side. He didn't shower. He didn't hardly sleep. He was there bathing himself with a washcloth in the bathroom, that it was adjacent to my room. But you know what? All of those doctors converged in one setting on one day, and they met with me, and right away, my husband and I said, we're in the right place. And you know what, guys? I never looked at my disease ever again, and I still don't. When you put your life in the hands of the foremost experts in any field, I was able to clock out. There are people who spend 20, 30, 40 hours a week studying their disease online. We'll never know as much as our doctors do, and when you find the best of the best, move on. I knew that when I went to the trouble of traveling to Boston, being away from my family, and going through remote care, I knew for sure that if this disease killed me, as I'm laying on my deathbed, I will be able to look up at my husband and my daughter, and I will be able to say I did everything I could. And I'll tell you what, it's liberating. Try it. How many of you have something that ails you, and you're just accepting the status quo? Get a second opinion. Empower yourself. I've spent the last 2 years committing myself to helping open the brand new Comprehensive Cancer Center at St. Elizabeth, and I'm very proud of it. My involvement there has been small compared to so many people. But what I will tell you is, somebody I know, somebody I love, and somebody I care about is going to get diagnosed with cancer. We have the most cases per capita of any state in the United States, and the top number of deaths per capita of any state in the United States. We need what St. Elizabeth has just brought to us. Somebody is going to need that care, and they're going to be able to get it right here in our region. Thank you, St. Elizabeth. My faith, that probably should come first. But when you know you're fighting a tumor, the first thing you think about is your doctor. I should have been saying, dear Lord. What I will tell you is, there was only about a nanosecond that I said, why me? Almost immediately, I thought to myself, why not me? Bad things happen to good people every day. God prepared me for this moment. I don't know why I was picked, and I certainly don't think He picked me. What I pray for every day, without fail, is that the Lord will allow me to remain on this earth as long as possible, so that I can continue to share my story and be a symbol of hope to people who've lost theirs. How long is that? I don't know. But what I do know is I was born with a level of resilience and a capability to find purpose, meaning, and positive and joy in my life. The power of prayer is enormous. Wow, I had people praying for me, people I had never met. I was on prayer chains at churches all around the country, likely all around the world. And what I will tell you is, karma is real, and so is the power of prayer. Has anyone ever heard about the Dead Sea? You go into it, and it's so heavily concentrated with salt that even if you try to sink, you float to the top. That's what the power of prayer did for me. And throughout my entire journey, I felt God's presence walking beside me. Every person that I ever opened a door for, every smile I ever exchanged, every kind word I ever said to anyone, flooded back to me tenfold. The goodness we put out in the world comes back to us. Never forget that. Then attitude. We own it, and we're responsible for it. I'm responsible for mine, and you're responsible for yours. How many people here were up last night? either couldn't go to sleep or woke up early and wrestled with things that are weighing heavily on your mind. How many people came here today and are in the moment? Forgetting about all of that noise and stuff and appreciating today. We have a mental strength that is beyond anything that we've ever envisioned. And when you go through extreme hardship, you're able to embrace that in ways that are life-saving and sustaining. I live in the moment. My husband, Jeff, he's lost a lot more sleep about my cancer than I ever will. So many nights, I glanced over and could see the grimace on his face and the hair graying and the hours of sleep that he lost worrying about me, and I just went on to sleep. I've learned that when I control my medical and I maintain and build my faith and I focus on today, because I don't know when I'm going to die, and neither do any of you. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We just don't know. And every moment we spend worrying about what happens tomorrow or the day after that or the day after that are the minutes we lose today. I want to make sure that every day I live it to the fullest. It's a choice we get to make. Release your worries and commit or recommit to finding joy in the life that's all around you. I would say take stock in who you have in your life, because hardship is a time you don't want to be searching for that support system. Who is it that you've surrounded yourself with? Do you have the right support system? For me, I will celebrate my 31st anniversary of marriage this year. And I can tell you that no matter how gruesome, and I'm telling you, I looked gruesome. I looked like Fred Flintstone with a swollen head and a big swath of cloth around my head, and I was a mess. And my husband sat there and cleansed weeks of dry blood out of my hairline and changed the dressing on my eye. And not once did he make me feel anything other than loved and beautiful. Couldn't have gotten through it without him. The impact it had on our daughter is immeasurable. She says her sophomore year of high school, she doesn't even remember it because the agony was such, watching her mom and fearful I was dying right before her eyes. My friends, my neighbors, my gosh, my colleagues. I had an enormous circle of people I knew and people I didn't know rallying around me. Take stock in your life and make sure that you have the right circle with you, because when hardship comes, you won't have time to build that network of support. What worries are preoccupying you today? What's consuming your mind? What's denying you the ability to experience joy and experience life to its fullest? Especially amid a pandemic. Have you thought to yourself lately, when are things going to return to normal? Guess what? Maybe they will, and maybe they won't. It's likely things are never going to be normal again. Not the old normal that we had a year ago. Whether it's the way that we look at commercial real estate markets, where and how people work, where we learn to automate things differently, how we deal with disease. Things may never get back to that old normal. How are you going to adapt and take control? What are those things in your life, just like I did? Because guess what? Forget about all of that stuff you do not control. It's a sideshow. It's a distraction. It will take you down that death spiral. It will keep you up at night. When you double down on what you control, it will free you, and you will experience a level of freedom that is liberating. In today's environment, with COVID, you aren't necessarily going to determine when the vaccine comes out and whether enough people will get it that it will make a difference. You can't control whether someone you love might get this virus, but there are things you can do, and they're free. Put on your mask. Wear a mask. Socially distance and use hand sanitizers. Wow, not a huge sacrifice. If you get COVID, and if you are the individual who's lying in a hospital bed on a ventilator with no family member in the room, can you say to yourself as you have your conversation with God, I did everything I could to protect my life and the lives of others? Or are you taking that last breath with regret? Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I would just say it is a pleasure to be here as the keynote. The work that Master Provisions does in our community is life-changing. The support that they provide in connecting resources to need is amazing. Because as I like to say, and it is so true, but for the grace of God, there go I. I may be the one who has the food insufficiency. I may be the one whose company closes its doors and I'm looking for work. I may be the one who has a medical condition and can't provide for myself any longer. The work that Master Provisions does in our community is worth its weight in gold. So as we look around and wonder what we can do to help control outcomes in our community, we can get behind their incredible mission and support them. My story is one of hopefulness. It really is. It's one that I hope others can draw upon. And when you're having that extreme hardship, that you can remember, if nothing else, to go over to that piece of paper or that pad in your home or by your bedside. And on one side, write down what you control, and on the other, write down all of the long list of things you don't. Take that one, tear it up, and throw it in the garbage, and double down on these. Thank you so much for allowing me to share just a small little bit of my journey. Unfortunately, they put a cap on me and told me I only had 20 minutes. I had a lot more stuff to share, Roger, but had to condense it there for you guys. But what a privilege and a pleasure it is to be here. And I want to give a special shout out to my friends and family at Vivitech for being the premier sponsor of this event as a demonstration of their commitment to supporting the mission of Master Provisions and a personal tip of their hat to support me. Thank you, everyone.